Hello everyone and welcome to our guide to deck building for Star Wars Destiny. This video is meant to be a quick start guide on building your first couple of decks, especially when you're new to Star Wars Destiny. So if you are new or you're going to be new soon, sit back and relax. This is going to be exactly what you're after. Now, before I get into the nitty-gritty details of some tips on how to build a deck, I want to mention that we recently added to our web store tokens that are compatible with Star Wars Destiny, so you want to check those out. I've played lots of games with and without those tokens, and they are very enjoyable to use and helpful, very useful. So if you haven't checked those out yet, do that, and as always, thank you guys so much for your support. Now, let's talk about building decks in Star Wars Destiny. There's a lot of elements. There's characters, there's battlefields, there's events, there's upgrades, and there's dice. I mean, there's lots of dice, and when you first start to build a deck, especially in a collectible game, there are lots of options and lots of cards, and you're going to want to use a lot of them, and you don't really have a way of valuing cards yet because you haven't played a ton of games. So this video really comes from the place of, now that I have played a lot of games, what are things I would have loved to have known up front before building my first couple of decks that would have been really helpful? Because, you know, there's a lot of things that you can do in a deck or not, and if you don't do some of those things, your first couple of games can feel less fun or less engaging, or maybe you get controlled by your opponent and you don't have an answer, or you get caught off guard and you just feel like Jango Fett's too good. And he's really not. It's just you have to understand some fundamentals, and that's what this video is all about. So first thing, let's talk about starting characters. So one of the coolest parts of Destiny is that you start with the characters you want to play on the board. You get 30 points, and the bottom left will have a Kylo pop up here. Bottom left of Kylo, you can see he has 10 and 13 points. So at 10 points, he gets one of his character die. At 13, he gets two. You have 30 points to spend when you're building out your squad. The very first force that I put together was Kylo and Vader. Grandfather, grandson, master, and disciple. Great theme, right? The problem is the deck building restrictions in Destiny are you have to run a character color to run those cards in your deck. So if you run Kylo and Vader, that is only blue, which means you only have access to blue cards. And up front, at least for the cards I had access to and the cards in the first set, that really restricts what's even possible, because each faction kind of has their strength and weakness, and it really leaves some weaknesses in that faction. So my first tip is at least run two colors in your first squad. So it may be natural to run Kylo and Vader or Rey and Luke, but highly recommend that you at least start with two colors, if not three. Three opens up options like crazy. Every card in the game that is for hero or villain, depending on which side you're on, is open to you, and that's really something else. The second thing I want to talk about is cards that bring dice. So when looking at a deck, you're building a 30-card deck, how many of those cards should you be building that have dice in some way, that bring dice to the game? And with all the decks that we've built and played with, the average is somewhere between 12 and 14. So some of the decks have a little less, 10, 11, some have a little more, 16, 17, like Rey, who triggers, her ability triggers off of playing and it upgrades onto her. And so she naturally has some more because there's some synergy there. But in general, you're going to be looking for 12 to 14 cards, making sure that you at least have that much dice going, because dice is how you're going to build up your board and progress throughout the game. And if you don't have enough cards bringing dice, you're going to have some draws that aren't so good, and your early game is going to be bad, and it's just going to be tough. The second thing you're going to be looking to put into your deck is dice control. And I mean this in both the way you control your opponent's dice and your own dice. Dice are dice, so you can roll blanks, and you will roll blanks, and if you're me, you can roll lots of blanks. You can always discard a card to reroll any number of dice, but that said, the more dice that you have, step one, which is what we talked about, the better your odds are going to be. Step two, being able to control dice is super critical. Your opponent rolls a +2, and a damage. If you can even remove that one damage, you just saved 5 damage, which is immense in this game. So I would at least be looking to put 8 to 10 cards in your very first deck that are going to control dice of yours or your opponent's. Now, thankfully, there are some upgrades that you can attach to characters that help control dice, so that can free up deck slots to do other things. But definitely make sure you have 12 to 14 cards that have dice, 8 to 10 that are controlling dice. And then we get to another very critical component of Star Wars Destiny, which is the battlefield. There are lots of cool battlefields, lots of abilities, and if you look at the ability, look at your characters, look at how it's synergizing with your decks, and just remember when you're looking at a battlefield that if your opponent spends their actions quicker than you, they're going to get access to your battlefield. So if there are battlefields that are good for you but also potentially very bad for you, be leery. Your opponent can easily just claim that battlefield. And that kind of leads to the final thing I want to mention, which is synergy among the deck. Destiny, there are 30-card decks. You draw 5, you get a selective mulligan any number you want, shuffle them into your deck, draw back up. At the end of each turn, you're going to get to discard and draw back up to 5. You are going to go through the vast majority of your deck in the vast majority of games, and you're going to see most of those cards in your deck. So the reality is, if your deck is trying to do something, right? Like we've seen the Qui-Gon Jinn preview, and he works with shields. If your deck is about shields, having 1 or 2 cards that give you shields, probably not that beneficial. It's not synergistic enough. So for your first couple of decks, I highly recommend, if a card is not giving you a dice, controlling a die, or working directly with the synergy of your characters and your battlefield and your deck, don't include it. Just don't do it, right? BB-8's cool, he's very effective, but if he's not fitting into the synergy of your deck, I don't recommend putting him in your deck. So just keep a lookout and find a theme that you're into, find some characters you're into, and just maximize that. Because I think what you'll find, Destiny's a very quick-paced game. You take an action, I take an action, we go back and forth, but it happens quickly. And so the more focused the role of your deck and the cards in your deck and what they're providing is, the more effective your decks are going to be, and I think the more fun you're going to have, especially up front. All right, so that has been our guide to deck building for Star Wars Destiny. Thank you guys so much for watching. We have plenty more coming for Star Wars Destiny. You can find a bunch of videos already on our YouTube channel and on our website. Be sure to check out Fantasy Flight Games for all of their content. And again, check out the tokens that we have made, compatible with Destiny, highly recommended. And of course, you can always buy all of these products on our web store. So we'll see you guys there. Thank you so much for your support, and we've got plenty more to come. See ya.